All right, everyone, welcome back into another PGA DFS live stream. Oh man, I gotta change the title. I apologize. We'll get that. Talking about the Sony Open right now. So really just any questions that you guys might have before lineup lock, get them in, and let's just, editing on the fly here. Just got done doing 2 videos, one for DraftKings and FanDuel NBA DFS, and then one for PrizePicks as well. So sorry, didn't get time to perfectly edit this video. Actually, so the music, is the music loud or is it too loud? I'm wondering about that. So the music itself, I actually started my own another YouTube channel, which is kind of like a how-to with content creation. If you guys find it, you can subscribe to it. I kind of wanted to take off before I tell people about it, but I showed people how to actually make that music player, which was I thought was pretty cool. Who's chalky that you are fading? Okay, yeah, so let's go ahead and get into some of the questions. Yeah, we'll get right into it. So we'll talk about that. So let me change the header here. I want to start with weather. I'm going to start with weather here, and then we'll get into that. So it is important, I think, if we're going to do a round 1 kind of live stream or up until lock live stream, to do this. To look at weather, because obviously weather can really dictate how a slate's going to go. Maybe first round leader, maybe betting wise, DFS picks, prize picks and whatnot. So as it sits right now, though, really not any weather advantage at all. It gets a little 10-mile-per-hour winds in the afternoon, but that's really nothing to be alarmed about. I mean, we can see 6 to 10-mile-per-hour winds that's nothing. It's going to be ideal scoring position. So part of the reason why I bring that up, and I've kind of touched on this a decent amount, is that something like PrizePicks here, where birdie or better are kind of low considering the weather conditions. And also, like last year, round 1 was slightly worse conditions, but they were able to score there as well. So I do think there's an opportunity both for this, like birdie or better percentage, and also maybe just strokes in general to bet PrizePicks wise. So looking at it, like just looking at the betting odds on Vegas as well, like their odds, I believe Jordan Spieth was like minus 150 to hit the under here. Tom Kim was decent, but Brian Harmon was the one that was really popping up as well. So some other bets that I placed out there with the weather looking like how it is and kind of just the matchups. Corey Connors should be able to beat Peter Malnati in birdie or better percentage. He is one of the better plays on the slate. Like he should be able to. Not a guarantee, obviously. I went with Seabez over Christian Kirk. Feel pretty good about Seabez as a play. Tom Hoagie over Harris English. The last few times we've seen Harris English hasn't been great. Tom Hoagie, our biggest worry is honestly the TCU championship game. How is he going to respond after that? And then Stuart Sink, just someone that has actually scored a lot of birdies on this tournament and in this tournament. So very interesting there. So we'll go ahead and get into Billy's question. We'll talk about ownership. And I do have a separate slide for that. Very nice. So give me a second while I load that up. Go into the cheat sheet, ownership leverage. Okay. Let's just kind of zoom this out so you guys can see it. Okay. So just kind of looking at ownership as it sits right now. Didn't really change throughout the evening. But to answer Billy's question, who's chalky that I'm fading? So let's just look at it. I don't really think we need to fade anyone. And that's kind of what this is telling us. KH Lee is someone that kind of pops up as someone that, is probably a little bit overvalued. Even though it says slightly under-owned, like compared to the players around him, probably a little bit overvalued. Like I don't see how I would select him over Taylor Montgomery, over Cam Davis, over JJ Spawn, like a fine play for sure. And even over Keith Mitchell, I would say Keith Mitchell as well, though probably a little bit overowned. He is a good play, but when you're comparing him to someone like Seabez right around there, Putnam, Grillo, like these are all just as good a play. So that's really strange to me. And then let's just sort it by projected ownership. Let's go for over like 4%. And I'm going to sort it by leverage rank and look who's overowned. And maybe let's go with like 6, just so we are pulling in some more chalky plays. So this is what the ownership leverage report says are players that are a little bit overowned. Russell Knox, who I actually like at the price tag. I think he's going to be a May cut. I think that makes logical sense. Troy Money Merritt, and this pains me to say, guys, if you know me at all, this is basically extended Troy Merritt fan club, 9 to 5 Sports. He went to the, you can see the pill in the background here, went to the same college as me for a year. So kind of always like Merritt. A little bit overowned. Came a little bit over. Like all these players down here are kind of overowned. I will say, and I want to call this out. I've seen a lot of talk about Webb Simpson this week. It's kind of strange. Very strange, honestly. And I say that in the sense that let's pull up Webb here. Okay. So Webb. Look at this. 7,400. That's a decent price tag for a guy that I guess had one good round at the RSM Classic, then fell back into Classic Webb. And he's really like what? He's had like one good round at the CJ Cup and one good round at the RSM Classic. Like not exactly someone I want to go out of my way to play. And if we compare him to, let's say, Matt Kuchar, a little bit priced up, but he is someone that, you know, been playing better, more consistent golf, has just as good like course history and whatnot. And then if we also tack on the fact that he won at this event like just 4 years ago, I think he makes more sense. He is someone that was right around winning an event less than 6 months ago, whereas Webb really just been struggling for a year now. Really, it was this event pretty much last year that was like alarming. Like, oh, his swing looks a little different, looks a little bit banged up. So that's strange to me. And also Stuart Sink. Like to me, these three players are, if you're playing them, the logic is exactly the same behind them, where you're kind of chasing that good course history and that somewhat good recent form. You're trying to hope that you can capture the upside. Okay. And honestly, I kind of like Sink the most out of all three of those, just given the price tag. Now, not elite, but also does have good course history. So I find it strange that like Webb's getting that much love ownership wise. So we'll pull that up again. So yeah, I want to talk about, sorry guys, the opposite side of this. Leverage plays. And I've made a build like this. I don't know what to do with Billy Horschel. Just was someone that said he expected to withdraw, but that was really just due to like, I think he didn't want to overexert his body with a new swing, if that makes sense. Looked good last week and one bad round. And then besides that, looked good. So he is someone that's very interesting. His ownership is lower than probably it should be. Like if we didn't have any of that news, he'd probably be chalkier than this. But we're seeing Hideki, really good leverage spot. Is he a better play than Sungjae Im or even Tom Kim? I mean, no, but is it that big of a difference? No. And so he's like half the percent of those guys. Obviously the defending champ from last year. Like really not a terrible play. And I have ran some ownership leverage based builds with Keegan because Keegan's not a bad play as well. The problem with these two, Keegan and Hideki specifically, is that there's no reason to go out of your way to play them, you know, like considering the players in their price point range. Like, yeah, you would much rather play Sungjae or Kim. Probably not Hoagie or Henley or Harmon. Maybe Jordan. You know, it's a coin flip between Jordan and Hideki, I feel like. So it kind of makes sense that he's underowned. I'm not saying that doesn't make sense, but at the same time, really good leverage spot. Like, you could definitely try to target him. Corey Connors is someone that I feel like should be chalkier than this, and I think he will be, but isn't it strange that Harmon's a little bit higher owned than Corey Connors? Just a little bit weird there. And then Keegan. Like, yes, it's tough to end up on Keegan. Keegan is kind of almost, I don't want to say an ideal play, but like, a pretty strong play, a golfer that played last week. Didn't do well, but kind of just a strong play given the price tag. And he has been someone that's shown upside. But yes, you would probably rather play McNeely. I think Taylor Montgomery's more fun of a play. KH Lee has been a birdie maker, so that makes sense. And you'd rather just go with these players. And I'm really shocked at the ownerships here. I thought this was going to be a very chalky range because of how pretty good all these plays are right here. JJ Spawn, obviously poor course history, okay, but at the same time has been someone that kind of checks the boxes that you want for this tournament. Key stat-wise, recent form-wise, obviously coming off of a good finish last week. That's encouraging. Look at Cam Davis, really just a strong play across the board. Thought he'd be a little bit more chalky. Keith Mitchell, a solid GPP play. Siwoo Kim, everyone likes to play Siwoo Kim, so Seabaz, a very strong play. Same thing with Andrew Putnam, very strong play. And then Grillo, like, should be able to make the cut. He's been a cut maker. Yeah, Matt Kuchar, like, there are a ton of really good plays here. And I think that might be the problem, is that they are all strong plays, so that they kind of all soaked into each other's ownerships. But it's strange because, like, yes, Tom Kim and Sun Jam are the best plays, but it's so easy to make a really strong fair and balanced build this week that I just found that a little bit strange. At the same time, we do have some really good value price point plays as well that should be able to make the cut. Ryan Armour, Aaron Baddeley, we have some good GPP plays as well. So just kind of interesting stuff there. Hideki plays his best golf on shorter courses. Yeah, I mean, as long as he can putt, fine, you know. I think last week was like really just eye-popping for Hideki as a play, just because like we were worried about his first start back in a while. You know, it had been someone that had been banged up, and I was a little bit worried about him as a play just because of that, and, you know, went and produced pretty well. So, favorite FanDuel misprice. I haven't really looked at FanDuel too much. I can pull it. I forget who it was. Let me pull it up on my phone real quick. No, I can't think of anyone off the top of my head. I know I was able to put out a really good, like, safe build again. I felt like it was, off the top of my head, I feel like it was pretty much exactly the same as, like, DraftKings pricing wise. For the most part, there wasn't anyone egregiously underpriced. Any concern for wins for early tee time? So looking at the weather report, let's pull it up here. No, so looking at the winds, PGA Tour weather, I'd like to use this. I think it's just great to use the same source no matter what. I know a lot of people like to use Wind Finder. That's fine. You could look at local weather, use Google weather if you want to as well. I just use this. It's the same source. So that way I know I'm getting a consistent report. I'm not getting mixed and matching, conflicting reports. You know, I want the consistency. So I just use the weather that's there on the PGA Tour website. And so, no, I mean, the weather is probably slightly better in the AM, and then really at the evening, like there's not. As it sits right now, I mean, I'm just reading this, but I don't see it. And looking at the 10-day forecast, Friday ideal, Saturday ideal, Sunday could get windy. So no, weather I'm not really too concerned about. So getting into the betting. So I brought up the putter and the golf balls to do the first round leader putting. And so I think it'd be fun. Let's just do that real quick. So last week I did a first round leader putting thing. And it was pretty much, I marked up 7 golf balls. And the reason I do 7 golf balls is trying to, basically 7 players on average is going to be 5% of the field. And I like to bet the top 5% of the field, whether that be first round leader or outright betting. And that's because those are the players that almost a majority of the time capture the first round lead or capture the win. And for first round leader, it's actually a little bit more than that because obviously you're splitting it up a little bit. So let's go ahead and do that. I think it'll be fun. Let's go with Nick Hardy. I did not see that coming. Wow. All right. So real quick, first round leader betting. These are, if I make the putt, and I think you guys will be able to see it. If not, this is a total fail, and I apologize for that. But let's just do it. I'll tell you guys who are the first round leaders to bet on. And actually, last week it wasn't bad. Fitzpatrick and I forget who else it was. Scotty Scheffler. I think they both like finished top 10. Colin Morikawa was the 8th most likely to have the first round lead. And then John Rahm was number 1 and ended up with it. So like this is pretty solid. It's just, this is for fun. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. First round leader bets. Putts. And actually my cats are right there, guys. Both of them. So this is probably going to be a fail already. So let's try it. There we go. And guys, I'm using a terrible Nike putter. Okay, it's just, it is what it is. I missed the first one. Number 6. We got number 1 now. Number 1 in. All right, so number 1 is in. We're betting Tom Kim, first round leader. Got number 4 up. Brian Harmon. No, Hideki. Hideki's in. All right. Got number 3 here. Three's in. I'm just too good of a putter, guys. We're going to have too many first round leader bets. All right, got Jordan Spieth here, number 2. All right, Jordan Spieth made it as well. I thought this would be harder on this carpet. I did. And I realize you guys can't really see it. Apologies. Number 4. No, this is not number 4. Number 5. All right, my cat got in the way. Didn't want number 5. And then the last one here. Oh, buddy. You're funny. All right, so we're betting Tom Kim, right? It was Jordan, Hideki, and was there one more? I forget. But that's who we're betting. Get this man on a scramble team. Actually, I do play pretty well on scrambles. It's probably what I do best at, honestly. Rigged. Pretty much rigged, honestly. We're going to have to go back down to the putting green next week. Once I want to do a final video of me setting up the putting green. I think it'd be a fun video because I did it in a pretty cheap way. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's a putting green. It's fun to have. And obviously I just didn't have time to run down there today, but fun. So yeah, honestly, I don't mind them. If we were trying to chase AMT times, obviously you'd probably just go, let's see here, Jordan, Harmon, Henley. Like you'd probably chase these guys for AM. And typically speaking, that's what I'm going to do. Like next week is going to be a fun one with the multiple courses. And I probably need to figure out how I'm going to do that because that's going to be a lot of putts with the course rotations. Maybe I'll just do 4. I don't know. But anyways, like if there is an AM advantage, these would be the golfers I would try to first round lead bet, you know? So let's see if are there any questions here. We're getting close to the lineup lock, guys. I'm interested. And it's honestly like there's always a little bit of sticker shock with some of the ownership. And first round leader wise, I did kind of split it up between AM and PM tee times. Didn't love it too much, but just because the weather, you know, it's ideal conditions for everyone. Top value picks. Okay, yeah, I can get into the top value picks. Give me a couple of seconds here. So I'm working on the value report right now itself. I can do it for DraftKings, for FanDuel. There's just a slight issue. That's kind of why I didn't want to pull it up earlier. So right now, just looking at the top values, and I don't really love Kurt Kitayama too much. And I feel like he is someone that could potentially be a little bit too chalk. But I'd be looking at him. Obviously, Andrew Putnam is really just ranking out as a spectacular play. And at an 8K price point tag, really just someone that is looking like he's undervalued. And honestly, underowned at less than or around 10% ownership. Looking at Alex Smalley, he's someone that's a birdie maker, you know, not a terrible play. But like, let's just look at players that are under, you know, 7K. Ryan Armour really pops up as a strong play. Has good course history. Has been someone that has been able to make cuts here. Make cuts on the tour recently. Like, I feel like if we're trying to chase make cut, it would be him. Let's see, are there any other sub 7K plays that are popping up? Ben Taylor was someone that was popping up a little bit. And we can see here, we're scrolling down here. As we get lower, it gets more risky. But not a terrible play with Ben Taylor. And then, yeah, let's see here. I'll pull them up here on the cheat sheet. So I'm going to do a data slicer real quick just to drop them down to that 7K price point here, or under 7K. Okay. So yeah, Ryan Armour. I like Stuart Sink, honestly. I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. Webb is gaining a lot of ownership, and I'm not even saying that's wrong. I'm just saying, logically speaking, it makes sense for both Matt Kuchar and Stuart Sink, kind of for the same reasons, to also get ownership. Especially like Sink, like you're trying to chase the upside. You know, he has been someone that, if you look at his recent starts, haven't been terrible, considering the price tag, and now considering the course history. Like, you would assume he would make the cut, and that's why he actually has a pretty good made cut percentage. Same thing with someone like Ben Taylor. Okay, not a bad play. And I just want to remind you guys, this is a high variance type of event, just because a lot of these players are coming in with a lot of time off. That kind of evens out the playing field, and really, it takes one bad swing that typically wouldn't happen in the middle of the season to kind of ruin a day. And we see that a bunch, you know. David Leamirth, he's a very interesting GPP play. Came off of a Korn Ferry Tour victory about, 3 months ago, then went through some terrible form and then popped up, 10th, 8th, and 11th. I mean, that is pretty good GPP value upside that I like. Eric Barnes is okay. Don't hate him. And then the one that I think really kind of pops up is Aaron Baddeley. Like, only ranks out 61st in the 9-to-5 model, but we're getting someone that ranks out 61st in the 9-to-5 model at 6.4. We're getting a pretty good chance at a make cut at a very cheap price tag. And that's because he has been in some pretty good recent form. Also made the cut here 2 years ago. Key stat-wise, not terrible. He's a decent play. Specialist-wise, that's the biggest worry. Terrible specialist. I mean, just terrible. Okay, so that'd be something that worries me as well. Oh, sorry. Yep, my bad, Charlie. Grayson Sigg. So yeah, Sigg is not a bad play. I haven't been able to end up on him. And let me just get back to the full board. Let me type in Sigg. So yeah, across the board, like, he is not a bad play. Ranks out pretty well. Personally, I didn't end up on him. He was someone that, when I was doing all the research and whatnot, was someone that I was thinking about. I kind of condensed the player pool down a little bit more than I typically would, I guess. But yeah, if you're ending up on him, by all means, I wouldn't talk you out of it for sure. I mean, makes a lot of logical sense considering the price tag. 42nd place finish here last year, pretty good stat fit, considering the price tag, like, not terrible, and nothing alarming either stat fit wise, except for that first key stat. And the first key stat was strokes gained total. So, whatever. Other than that, looking really good. So certainly someone you can end up on. Let's see here. I have my line starting with Connors with 4 8,000 players and Poston. Any thoughts? Go down on Poston and pay up. No, I actually like JT Poston. He is kind of like the lowest of the best plays, like the lowest priced players are the best plays. And he's someone that I think makes logical sense, both for an outright and like cash and GPP play. Sure, the course history, like, okay, 42nd, 2 missed cuts, and then a 28th place finish. Like, that is good enough. Key stat wise, top 20, good enough. Really, the reason why you like him is because kind of what we saw last week was encouraging, and the fact that he played last week is kind of why I like him as a play. I'm watching my cat in the background, guys. Better not be getting into trouble. But yeah, I like him as a play. Like, really just like the lowest priced of the logical players that fit the mold of someone you'd want to target. So you could pay down. I mean, that is kind of my thought process. Like, literally, I've had this thought process line up pathwise. It's like, either I am finishing my build out with Poston and having some salary left over, or I'm kind of doing more of a studs and duds. Maybe going more Ryan Armour, maybe going Baddeley, maybe taking a more risky upside GPP play, and thus being able to afford to pay up for someone like Cam Davis, maybe even Keegan if I'm trying to gain some leverage, So, I mean, that's a great question, and honestly, it's like, we'll see. We'll see here. Coming close to lineup lock. Yeah, Seabez, I like him as a play. Just kind of a standout play at his price tag. And yes, part of this is due to some starts not on the PGA Tour, why he's popping up. And that might be what's keeping his ownership low. But really just a strong play across the board. Finished top 20 last year at this tournament. Key stat-wise, really good effective scoring, which is that 9 of 5 stat, which is pretty much a measure of cut likelihood and then upside. Ranks out well there. Strokes gained total ranks out really well there. And yes, these are different sample sizes because obviously he has some different starts mixed in there, but really good across the board. Like, it's tough not to like him as a play. The biggest issue with Bazoo now is we have a lot of great players in that price point range. I am playing him. I would say we probably should play him as well at the same time, given the nature of this tournament where we have a lot of really strong plays in this kind of 8K price point tier. And even like we go a little bit lower, I wouldn't blame you for say if you chose not to. Do you like Chez over Shelton? Yeah, I don't really like either of them. Shelton is he picking up double-digit ownership? That shouldn't be right. Let's see here. I don't know why he'd be picking up double-digit ownership. There's a lot of similar plays. That's weird to me. It's not a terrible play, but shouldn't be that high owned. Let's see here. Just to compare, like you got Lipsky right there, who's also a pretty good play. Yeah, Chaz. Chaz is a good play as well. The problem with this price tier is that they're all kind of the same play. There's not a big difference there. Where I think I'd rather go Armour or someone like that. Ben Taylor. I don't know. I have found myself not really ending up in that price point tier, kind of just skipping over most of it. Sure, maybe a little bit of Sig, maybe a little bit of Kazaider. Neither of them are bad plays. They're both expected to make the cut. Shelton probably has a little bit more upside, but also, that's a good question, honestly. I would say I prefer Shelton over Chez. Just give him the upside. But they both should make the cut. Seems like a good week to play Denny. Denny is, I think everyone in the fantasy golf community is kind of frustrated with Denny. And let me go back into like the chatting screen here before we get into lock. So yeah, with Denny, just making sure he's not destroying anything back there. With Denny, I feel like the whole DFS community has been all in on Denny, and he's burnt us, and we've been all in on Denny, and he's rewarded us. I think people are just kind of burnt out on playing him, really, to be honest with you. Ranks out 32nd in the 9-5 model. He is someone that obviously can get hot with his putter. The biggest concern with him is hitting some greens and then making some birdies. It wouldn't be shocking to see him get hot, but at the same time, you get Grillo at a lower ownership than he should be, Putnam at a lower ownership than he should be, Kuchar at a lower ownership than he should be, Smalley, who has some upside, Harris English, who has good course history, coming into some better form. Like, if we were playing McCarthy, I feel like it'd be a play that you'd be forcing in there, if that makes sense. And that's kind of my issue with him. So let's see here. Got about 8 more minutes until lineup lock. I'm very interested, and then we'll probably do about, another couple of minutes after it goes to lock. So I guess I'll get into PrizePicks again real quick, just because obviously after lineup lock, this is still stuff you could potentially put out there if you wanted to, considering when they go to lock. So I actually ran out this parlay. It's not one I expect to hit. I'm doing it for fun, honestly, and there's a difference. Sometimes, and this is, if you guys can play PrizePicks, great. If not, sorry, honestly. But this is one that I put out there for fun. Okay, so LeBron James currently just minus 150 to hit his over right now, which is basically, let me look it up. I think it's like a 60% chance to hit that. And then Brian Harman was basically that as well. So those are two players that should be good. And then Corey Connors over Peter Malnati. Like, he should be able to make more birdies than Peter Malnati today, just given his form. Tom Hoagie over Harris English. Like, Harris English has been pretty solid. But Tom Hoagie, just a little bit of a better play, this week. Same thing with Seabass over Chris Kirk, who I like Chris Kirk as well. And then Stuart Sink over Matthias. Like, those are all ones that in theory should hit. And that's kind of what I like about like golf, especially for these type of props, is that the course is projected to play easier than it typically is. Okay. And we saw this last week twice where PrizePicks and kind of just the betting market didn't factor in weather, where round one, it was much easier scoring. And then they over adjusted to where round two, where it's a little bit worse weather, higher winds, where they over adjusted and then the under was the play. And so that's kind of what's nice about golf, especially betting it, is instead of like a bunch of independent variables coming in to maybe make a bet better or worse, like for NBA, if one player gets ruled out, it changes the whole dynamic of that bet. In NFL, maybe game script doesn't go their way. Maybe the special teams score 2 touchdowns and it becomes much more of a running script rather than a passing script, stuff like that. That really doesn't happen in golf, which is super nice. So it is one in which you could do more kind of parlay type things. So let's just say it is supposed to be an easier scoring event today. You could just bet a lot of these golfers to get more than this because there's 2 variables, weather, and then we already have it established of who are the good plays, who are the players that are going to be scoring birdies. So it's a lot less there, and which is nice. Like, you don't have to worry about coaches and whatnot, foul trouble, potentially getting ruled out. Like, it's just small variables that go into it, really, and it's just wind and if they're a good play. So I kind of already broke this down, but like in theory, Corey Connors should be a good bet for the over. Billy Horschel actually should be. I don't know if you guys are worried about his injury or not, but he should be someone. K.H. Lee would be. Seabass doesn't really rank out too well just yet, but look at his production here. He has been able to get the over birdies, so that's encouraging to me with Seabass. And then Stuart Singh, he was also someone that ranked out in the plus, and obviously he's been able to score on this course as well. So those are all very interesting plays. And another thing you could do is just kind of game it based off of their price point. Like, we know Tom Hoagie, we know Seabass are higher priced players. KH Lee, Sunjay M, like, you could do that as well. And maybe you just don't do Hideki and Tom Kim because they're set at 5. The average birdie scored last year in the first round, birdie or better scored was like 4.57. And obviously we'd be chasing much more of the better plays to hit the over there. So I don't mind that route as well. And then one thing I'm still trying to figure out is, and the same strategy would actually hold up for strokes, guys, where you could easily do that for strokes as well. Where if it's playing easier than expected, they should all be able to get the under, or if it's playing harder, you'd bet the over. And I like that a little bit more because with golf, it just makes more sense to stack it that way, where you're not just tossing in a bunch of independent variables. But looking at stuff like range of regulation, fairways hit, I don't know if I want to mess around with that just yet. I'm still toying around if that's like a good idea or not. But looking at birdie or better percentage, or birdie or better matchup, I feel like until they start kind of, let's just look at it. Let's see, like Seabass over Christian Kirk, okay? Until they give like Kirk a half a birdie or better over Seabass, I feel like just betting on the better golfer and maybe doing like a situation like this where it'd be, let's take who are the 2 players that are the biggest difference just considering pricing on DraftKings. Like, in theory, this is going to hit more times than it does it. So if you were to do this strategy, let's just say probably 8 weeks in a row, or 8 days in a row, Thursday through Sunday, twice, by doing this strategy, I feel like it would hit, let's just say 5 out of 8 times, which in this scenario where you only need to cash over 33% of the time to have a profit, that's why I like this, because in theory, this should be the better route to go than some of the other sports that are out there, that have more variables in it. And so that's where I kind of like it. So guys, 2 more minutes. Any questions before lineup lock? All right. We're getting there. I'm curious if we're going to see any sticker shock. And it obviously depends on which contest and whatnot. And I apologize, guys. Yesterday, I wanted to do a live stream. I was just burnt out by the time I got there. I'm actually working on a slight update. I'm always working on slight updates. But just on like visual stuff with the data and just making it easier to navigate. I have put out like a PGA Tour Lite mobile application. And I'm testing that out right now to see if that helps, because right now it's set up for kind of desktop data. People go in there with their desktop. So I want to be more set up for mobile users as well. So I think I'm going to have 2 separate data sheets or selections, one for mobile, one for desktop. And then I think that's the best route to go. And that way I can still keep the cost down, because obviously my whole thing is, providing really good data points and data points you don't get elsewhere for the lowest price point. I mean, 3 lineup optimizers for $10, can't really beat that in general. I'm going to go Grillo and Polzin. Let's hope they do well. Let's hope they do well. And I remember just last year, this tournament just being such a frustrating tournament, just because there were so many people that had like good rounds in round 1 that were kind of random, and then a bunch of players that had bad rounds in round 1 that went low. Sanjay being one of those, Webb being one of those, or his like flip-flop. And that just goes to the variance that we have, at the start of the year. So who's teeing off first? Troy Money Merritt is teeing off first with Brandon Steele, Bird, Matthias, Kyle. All right, so we're going to be able to, I didn't even check this, we're going to be able to sweat Christian Bazoon out for basically the full day today. That's going to be interesting. All right, so I'm trying to pull up the ownerships on my phone here. Obviously, that takes a little bit long. It's also probably something I could just download on the desktop here. Once it loads, I'm very curious. All right, so I'm looking at my phone right now. Just it's faster. So the highest owned on cash in the showdown that I'm in, Polzin. Interesting. Not the showdown, the single entry cash. Polzin, in Kim, Mitchell. So people went kind of risky there, GPP wise. KH Lee, a little bit more risky there. Hughes, that's interesting. Then Harmon, then Connors, then Putnam, Todd. Interesting there. All right. We have some interesting things, and that's what's always fun about cash compared to GPP sometimes, is that you get some weird cash ownerships. And I think that's why it's been like easier to cash this season, is because there's been some really just strange cash ownerships. And so I'm trying to download the Excel file here just to show you guys the ownership. And I'll pull it up. And the screen's probably getting blurry right now because I'm doing this. All right, I'm going to pull it up on the screen. All right. So let's just delete. My cats are running wild today, guys. This is also why I don't go live as much. Let's just insert. All right. Now I really just care about Tom, Kim. Yeah, so let's just hide this. All right, so the highest projected owned players on the main slate: Tom Kim, Sanjay M, Brian Harmon, as expected. KH Lee, that's interesting, just given the fact that he was higher owned than some players. Not a bad play, just probably shouldn't have been the fourth highest owned player, although it is kind of by much, 2%. That's a big difference. So interesting there with KH Lee. I mean, not a bad play. Obviously, KH Lee, pretty good play. Just shocking that he was the fourth highest owned. Like, and Polzin even still, and Mitchell. Like, these are two kind of shocking ones. It seems like people took a little bit more of a price discount, which is fine. Corey Connors, I know the data said it was going to happen, but at the same time, I would have thought that he would be probably the third highest owned. And so let's look at Hideki, because remember, he was someone that would pop up as someone that would be a great leverage play. And I'll just filter this. Let's see Hideki. So yeah, big leverage spot there. More than Sungjae Im and Tom Kim were more than double Hideki, so that was a big leverage spot. And let's look at Keegan, because obviously he was someone ranking out as a decent leverage play. So 9%. Yeah, so pretty good leverage there if you guys chose to go that route. And typically speaking, that has been a pretty beneficial approach. Tom Kim, 10% more than anyone in my contest. Oh, you're overweight on Tom Kim. It's not a bad strategy. The Tom Kim stuff is very interesting. Like it's either he is going to continue to be this stud on tour, and that is just what we should expect, or he's just going through a really hot stretch of golf and it's going to fall off soon. It's tough to say that it's the first, honestly, because we have seen this stuff happen. But I rode with Tom Kim a decent amount. Some kind of other surprising ownerships. Let's see. I would kind of say Maverick McNeely a little bit, but not too much. Let's see. Did we gain any big leverage on anyone? Aaron Baddeley, 1%. I mean, that's expected. Davis Thompson was actually getting some love from some people, so I'm a little bit shocked that that's that low. So just looking and going back to the PrizePicks example, Peter Malnati, ownership compared to Corey Connors, like time in and time again, that should be the correct bet. But as we can see, the ownership was pretty much tight. Like we see this price point here, or this price point range, like 9% to, let's say even 14%. Like that's pretty tight. Like not a big difference there. And that was kind of expected this week, just given the nature of the event where we had a ton of great plays on paper, but some plays that had starts at the STOC, which I think everyone kind of went that route. If they had played last week, they got some ownership over some players. So Tom Kim, Sungjae Im, Brian Harmon, KH Lee, JT Poston, JJ Spawn. Where's Tom Hoagie at? Tom Hoagie's actually under-owned. And honestly, is that just because of the flight stuff? Which I'm not saying that's the wrong approach, but that's interesting there. That Tom Hoagie, kind of a lot of people liked him at the start of the week and then fell off. So that's interesting. Let's see where Shelton ended up. Just looking at that question, Shelton and Reeby. And this is like one of those questions like that where, in theory, it's not going to be a big difference in general. Like it's just not. So Shelton, 7.5, because their ownerships aren't really high enough. And Chaz. So Chaz was under-owned. So in theory, it's not going to matter that much. When I was looking at I refer to this a decent amount, I did like a big like research report when looking at like winning GPP lineups. The ownership of the last two players is like 5% or so. So it's not someone that's like terribly under-owned or that people didn't really consider. It's someone that people consider, just logically speaking, they weren't a great play like Luke List last week. So like, why would you naturally end up on him? Why would people naturally end up on him? The only way people are ending up on players like that are because literally for the GPP upside. So just interesting there. But that's all I have, guys. Obviously, if I can do more live streams going into lock, I think that's fun. I think it's a fun avenue to go with. At the same time, it's tough. The content with golf is tough, especially at this time of year, because the lineup lock is always changing. Just given the tournament. And so it makes it difficult. Like tomorrow or next week will be difficult. Probably have to do one on Wednesday night, so just interesting stuff there. Okay. Jordan Spieth over or under owned. Let's take a peek real quick before we get out of here. Jordan. 14% owned. And let me just see. I'm going to pull it up on my screen real quick. I'm not going to pull up the screen again. Just real quick. Want to look at it. So he was actually slightly over-owned than he was projected to be by 1%. Okay. But slightly under-owned. Slightly under-owned with that slight bump. So he's also not a bad play, but I would say Hideki was the big play if you're trying to gain leverage on the field, and Keegan for that matter, because they're both really good plays, just plays that naturally you wouldn't end up on them unless you're trying to chase, ownership leverage. But that's all I have for you guys for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully your screens are green for this tournament. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about this. I'm excited for it. On paper, it's a really easy event, but at the same time, I remember last year and heck, even last week where an easy week through the first 3 rounds and then had a little bit of a sweat. So that's just early season DFS. It's just a lot of variance, a lot of random bad rounds. And it's just really when those rounds occur, especially for those top end players. Obviously you want them to make the cut to get the most points. And so I'm looking forward to the cut sweat. All right. Thanks for joining in for the live stream, guys. Let's have a good slate.